Well, good evening. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Ricardo Miller Effective Living Monday Night Conversation. I am your co-host tonight, Carol Crockett, and I just want to say thank you to Coach Ricardo. And if I were you, I would press that like or and share button because we have some great information to share tonight. And if you are looking to find out anything about Coach Ricardo Miller, please go to www.ricardomiller.com to find out all the things that he offers. And he does offer one-on-one coaching, group coaching, where you will find him every morning at 6:30 in the morning. He is a speaker, teacher, and a great motivator. And every Monday, he drops his weekly blog that we will talk about tonight. But first, let me introduce and let me just say to my guest tonight, Adrian Temple. I call him the one and only Adrian Temple. And I am so excited to have you tonight, Adrian. Thank you so much for being here.
Yes.
And guess what? We're going to talk tonight about risk investing in yourself. But Adrian, tell them about yourself, but tell them about Go Sooners.
Yay. Well, first of all, thank you, Ms. Carol, for just allowing me to share this space with you. Thank you for Coach Ricardo Miller for allowing me to get on this platform. I really appreciate it. So myself, I'm just a good old city boy from Dallas, Texas, born and raised in Dallas, Texas. And she mentioned Sooners. So I did attend the University of Oklahoma, and I am a Sooner diehard. No, people were always like, "Well, but you from Texas, though." I'm like, it doesn't matter. My money went to OU, so that's where my allegiance lies. But no, I'm a diehard Sooner, but I'm just excited for this opportunity. So I currently reside back in the DFW area. I'm married to my beautiful wife, my queen, Tamisha Templeton, and we have 4 beautiful daughters: Jalen, who's 20, Amaria, who's 11, Alexa is 7, and Jessie Nicole is 4. And let me just say, there's never a dull moment in my house. So talk about risk. I take risk every day dealing with all these women in my house.
I bet you do. I bet you do. But listen, since we are going to be talking about risk, and also, just risk being risk on yourself. And but before we start, Adrian, I really want to give a shout out to some people because we just noticed this weekend there were lots of college graduations going on, right?
Mhm.
And so we want to give a shout out to our own Hannah James Coles
Yes.
because she took a risk because she left one school and went to another. Now she is Nurse Hannah. So
Yes.
we're excited about the risk that she took. And also 2 other ladies that I know who are adult women who got kids that graduated high school and they went back to school. Shout out to Kim McDonald and
Yes.
Shermelle who took
Yes.
a risk to go back to school. Is that not huge to go
That's
back to school?
amazing.
That's a risk, right?
Absolutely.
To sit there with these young adults and then they did it, but they did it. And they're a part of our church and yeah, we want to applaud them. But also, Adrian, this month is mental health awareness. And I don't want to
Mm.
forget that either because we have to encourage one another to take care of yourself. I always say, talk to someone, listen to your body, and don't negate that God has placed therapists in our lives to help
Amen.
us. And I want to encourage us as family members, listen and look at our family members because it is so important that we don't forget that. So, but let's get to our topic, okay?
All right.
So this week is all about you again. Coach has been talking about, ourselves and how important it is to be ourselves and to take care of ourselves, which goes along with that mental health somewhat. But but he said he want us to know you got to decision. Did you hear that, Adrian?
Mm-hmm.
Decide to take a risk on yourself. That's what we're talking about. Taking that risk on yourself. And it's time to make the investment in yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
You are never going, Coach said, you are never going to live a life effectively if you don't learn how to believe in yourself. I want to stop right there, Adrian, because he said two key things there: risk on yourself and making an investment in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So, any one of those, Adrian, you want to talk about? Because my question is, why is it so hard for us to believe in ourselves?
You
Why
know what?
is it?
I think a lot of us are have misguided identities.
Okay.
You know,
Oh.
and I think so often it's so easy for us to gravitate to something that just feels
Mhm,
good, even if it's something bad for us. Sometimes we
mhm,
can be doing something bad for so long that it becomes normal and we get
mhm,
comfortable with it, right?
mhm,
And even in our any an identity that we associate with, it can be a
mhm,
bad thing, but we do it for so long that it becomes second nature to us, and then we
mhm,
decide to just run with it and go with it. And I think so. As far as believing in ourselves, sometimes we can be so caught up in the mask that we wear that
wow.
we don't even see ourselves for
Mhm,
who we really are or who God intended for us to be. Right.
mhm,
And I mean, I myself, to be honest, I wore several masks
mhm.
throughout a good majority of my life. And it wasn't until later in adulthood, probably 8, 9 years ago, that I finally kind of saw myself,
Okay.
fully saw myself, kind of how God intended for me.
Mm,
And
mhm,
it was in those moments that I began to kind of make a turn and start focusing more on investing in myself and thriving in the manner that I think I was predestined to do.
mm. Interesting. You talked about you wore this mask for so many years, and you're absolutely right, because sometimes we don't really believe the identity who Christ said we are,
Mm-hmm.
and because of that, you like you say, misguided identity, and because of that, it's so easy for us to try to be like someone else. We allow the culture to identify us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we sit up and, like you said, I think later on I was going to ask, but it's a good place to put it here. Sometimes we don't even know our authentic self.
Ooh.
I always say, will the real Carol please stand
Yeah.
up? Because we do we allow so many things to shape our identity,
Mm.
and sometimes to give us our identity.
Woo. You said the whole thing right there. So I'm one of the youth leaders at the church.
Uh-huh.
And just for years, we always try to pour into the kids and we try to be very transparent with them, right? And we've always kind of tried to empower them to make sure that they understand who they are and to
Mm-hmm.
set boundaries and
Mm-hmm.
morals for themselves. Because and I was always told them, especially young ladies, but
Mm-hmm.
if you don't have any boundaries for yourself, your boundaries are going to become whatever someone else wants them to be.
Wow.
Right. And
Mm-hmm.
so your values are going to become whatever someone else wants them to be if you
Mm-hmm.
don't have any established for yourself. Right. So talking about being our true authentic self, sometimes
Mm-hmm.
your true authentic self is someone else's authenticity. You know? And
Oh.
I mean, there's so many people, and to
Mhm.
be honest, there are even some people in the church. There are even some
Oh
people in
my
the church
God.
that are living not in their authentic self, and go
Hmm.
ahead.
No, I'm almost like raising my hand because
Oh
of
yeah.
church.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So I mean, it's and it's. I want to say it's sad that sometimes that some people can't see past different things, But there's no condemnation or anything
No.
because again, as I said before, I was in that situation. I
Mhm.
wore this false sense of who I was, and I identified different aspects of my life based on other experiences, right? And I
Mhm.
allowed
Mhm.
those experiences to dictate and to define who I was. But
Mm.
it was because when I started to mature more, and we can thank my wife for
Mhm.
her assistance in that. Because when I met her, she was like, "Nah, bro, I ain't with this, ain't with that. You got to get it together." So,
Some
uh,
some people help you find that
some
identity.
people will help you. Sometimes you ain't got no choice but to find it. You're gonna find it or lose it.
That is too funny. But you know that I love what you said too. And this is, like you say, this is no condemnation. But sometimes, and I always say we go to church and we allow church to identify us in the mass,
Uh-huh.
in the, not the mask, but in the massiveness of church. We have those masks put on. And you know what? We've gotten so great at, I think Pastor Kelly called it too, that churchanese.
Oh,
And,
uh-huh.
we've learned how to be
Yep.
what the church say we should be, not
Right.
what God say we should be, what
Yes.
the church help us identify ourselves being. And then we live this life that is not truly who we are. And since you work with the youth, I'm telling you, the youth will call you out of that.
Yeah.
Will they not call you out if you're not authentic?
In a heartbeat. In a heartbeat. And I think that's, and credit to just the other youth leaders that we have. I think the reason why we're able to engage so effectively with some of our youth is because we are very transparent. It's
That's
very
good.
important for us to be transparent.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't want to see someone that seems like they got it all together
Absolutely.
and they don't make mistakes, and they need somebody that they can relate to. So
Right.
me personally, I try to be very transparent. Like, look, brother Adrian, I made this mistake. I did this wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I did, and so letting them know I'm speaking from a place of experience. Like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, I have scars. Let me show
Right.
you my scars, so I can
Mm-hmm.
maybe help prevent you from getting so many more scars down the road.
Mm-hmm.
Or
Mm-hmm.
help you navigate how to
Mm-hmm.
get through this rough patch that you're on, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe even prevent you from getting into even worse places. So
Mm-hmm.
I think
Mm-hmm.
it's really important for us to do that, and
Mm-hmm.
and also to keep ourselves open
Mm-hmm.
to for people to pour into us, and for
Mm-hmm.
to receive what other people have.
Mm-hmm.
That also ties into be careful about who you let in your circle.
Well, that is so true. Mm-hmm. And you know what, Adrian? You said even for the youth, but that is part of what Coach Ricardo talked to us about here on Hey Tamisha, talked to us about study yourself, because at this age, sometimes we got to go back and not go back to find condemnation and to stay there and look at regrets, but we need to go back and try to identify our true self. Study, he says, he got a chapter in the book, study your past, because
Mm,
your past is really important to determine where you are today
mm,
and then where you can go.
mm-hmm.
But if and I always say, sometimes we've done things long for so long, and sometimes they've been wrong. He talked about sometimes we got to unlearn some of the stuff we've learned,
Mm-hmm.
because we have done these things so long. It's kind of like, I used to say this all the time, honey, that's just the way I am,
Oh my gosh. Oh yes. Yes.
and the Lord convicted me of that, and he said, that's how you are, but that's not the way I want you to be or
Ooh.
stay. Yeah, it was one of those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we talk about being authentic and knowing, in order to be authentic, you got to begin to know who you are and be true to your own self.
Right.
But also, not only we gotta know who we are, but you got to learn how to believe in yourself, and then also take a risk,
Oh yeah.
being yourself, because if you've had that mask on, you don't really know who you are, and now you're learning, and now you got to take that risk in navigating who you are and
Ooh,
continuing to be who you are. And that means you now got to take a risk being yourself if you haven't ever done that. But
very
you know
true.
what? I thought about something. I want you to share this, because I know for a fact you took a risk. That would have been a big risk for me. It probably was nothing for you, but share with us about your experience with skydiving.
So I've always kind of had this adventurous personality. I've always wanted to jump off some things, or just
Okay.
roller coaster have always excited me. Well, after the first time I got on a roller coaster, it excited me. Up until my first time getting on a roller coaster, I think I was in sixth grade. I was terrified. I was hyperventilating. I was sweating from every part of my body.
Uh-huh.
Uh, at Six Flags with a good friend of mine, and I was praying. I'm on this ride. I'm praying like I ain't never prayed before. But but afterwards, man, the thrill of it just kind of excited me. So I've always kind of
Mhm.
had this little adventurous thing, and I've always wanted to skydive. And I was like, I'm waiting for the right time. I don't know. I'm just I don't know. Just I was just waiting. But I figured turning 40, that was a great opportunity. And me and my sister, Kendi, we had talked about it for a little while. We was like, you know
Uh-huh.
what, you turn. She was like, you're turning 40. I'll be turning 45. Let's just do it. And I was all excited. Now I'm not gonna lie. To be honest, we get there.
Uh-huh.
We're checking in. I'm still pretty excited, about
Okay.
everything. And I see the little planes that we going up in. I'm like, them little tiny planes. Yeah. Look, I think reality was kind of kicking in. I'm like,
Uh-huh.
whoo, we here now. I was like, I'm not turning back, but
No turning
whoo,
back. Uh-huh.
whoo, would Jesus be a fence? Right now. And even and we processed through everything, and they say, all right, Adrian, you're up. And so I
Uh-huh.
was going up first. I'm thinking,
Uh-huh.
oh Lord, and I got to do this first. I'm like,
Uh-huh.
I was doing. Joyce Myers has a phrase, "Do it afraid," right?
Uh-huh.
And let me tell you, I was afraid,
Okay.
but I was gonna do it. And so I get on the plane, and this plane is so small. There's only room for the pilot
Mm-hmm.
and uh, just a few people in the back. That's how small
Mm-hmm.
this plane is.
Wow.
And so I get in. I'm sitting. I'm seated. And it's a tandem, so I'm connected to my jump guide.
Uh-huh.
And but then my sister was going too. So thankfully, I saw her. She came and got in after me. Her and her guide. So I'm like, okay. So I was doing it afraid with someone. And my sister, she's always kind of been a confidant of mine, right? So
Uh-huh.
it was reassuring to see her, and she was so excited, and she literally had zero fear whatsoever. So her excitement kind of calmed my fears down. So I'm like,
Okay.
okay, we're
Mhm.
doing this, we're doing
Okay.
this, and she was just like, let's go. And I mean, a few minutes later, and she was just joyfully just threw us up out of there. I'm like, okay, here we go. And it was. I'm thinking, oh Lord, all right, God, I just had to go ahead, and get everything straight, just in
Uh-huh.
case, Lord. Hey, Lord, I've been a good servant.
Right.
you know,
First they start counting all those things, huh? Those
all those things.
checklists.
But you know what? It was so freeing. It
Okay.
was it was like something I never would have expected. So when I got out, kind of got out of the plane,
Mm-hmm.
it always felt like I was floating. I know it's free
Wow.
fall, but it felt like I was floating, and I just started just being in awe. I'm like, man, just in awe of what I was doing, where I was at. I could see the world essentially, and I'm like, I was just like,
Wow.
God, you're so amazing. Like, look what I'm
Wow.
doing right now. This is crazy, but a lot of people think this is crazy, crazy. Although it's crazy, it's amazing at the same time, and it just
Wow.
showed me just how good God was, and
Uh-huh.
reminded me how much He's covering me and carrying me through impossible things.
Wow. And that was one of the things I had to ask you, but you kind of shared that. There was some fear at first, right?
Oh yes.
And then, of course, like I don't know if that was a crazy risk or a healthy risk for you,
Oh
but it
man.
was a risk. And as you shared the result of it, and I love that you shared that, that there is going to be some fear, some healthy fear, but
Absolutely.
also thank God Kidney was there because you might have backed out, right?
Yeah, it was a possibility. There was a
Yeah.
possibility, but I was just, I don't know, it was amazing. I was just thankful. No, I mean, it just, you know what? I may have backed out, but then again, I
You was
had
up there then, huh?
I had built so much momentum at waiting for this day. I was like, I'm here. So I was like, I'm
Okay.
just gonna, I do it afraid.
Well, that's good. Well, anyway, thank you for sharing that, Adrian, because I kind of wanted to ask you. I didn't know if it was Kendra to being the adventurous one, or was it you? So, or
Well,
who started it first?
she's always kind of been adventurous too, but I think we were kind of pushing each other to the
Okay.
extent. But it was fun nonetheless.
Well, good. Well, let's talk about taking that specifically on taking a risk on yourself. Coach
Oh
mentioned in
yes.
the blog, you are never going to live effectively if you don't learn how to be yourself. And we've kind of alluded to that a little bit. If you don't
Mhm.
learn how to be yourself, you will never learn. You will never live an effective life. So we talked about that even putting on those masks and
Right.
living for someone else and those kind of things. So, but yes, we won't ever be, a life full of, a life that's effective if we don't learn how to be ourselves. I wrote this and it says there's no penalty for being better than who you are, but you
Mhm.
must know who you are before you can really invest in yourself. You got
Mhm.
to know who you are, and you got to know who you are, but you must know to be better. You must know who you are before you can really invest in yourself.
Mhm.
But Coach talked about investing in yourself. We think about investing, a little bit of kind of a monetary term or something
Mhm.
like that. But investing in yourself is only a risk, he said, if you don't believe in yourself and
Mm.
your ability to apply the knowledge you've been taught and are continuing to learn. Now, when you think about that, we're real big here in this community. We talk about being lifelong learners,
Mhm.
and so even with knowledge, I just believe that if we, first of all, we can have a lot of knowledge, but if we don't ever apply that knowledge, then what good is the knowledge?
Absolutely.
You know. So, but we have to believe. Do you remember that movie where was it Hidden Figures, I believe, or something? And the lady used to tell the little baby, "You
Oh
are
yeah.
beautiful, you are loved,
You are
you are
smart.
smart."
You are
Sometimes you gotta have
important.
you gotta have some of that self-talk, you know.
Absolutely. I know. I did a Facebook Live for the church
Uh-huh.
Friday before last, I think. And one of the points I had was sometimes you got to encourage yourself.
You do. Mm-hmm.
And actually, Coach Ricardo had did a Facebook Live a few days before, and he was kind of centered around the same thing, but focused on the different challenges we face,
Right.
we
Mm-hmm.
navigate through. I was
Right.
focusing more so once you're in those challenges, how to navigate through those things. But one of those points was really you have to be able to encourage yourself.
You got to.
It's great to
You
have
got
people around you, but
to.
sometimes you gotta, hey, you know what? No, let me speak to me. Let me
Mm-hmm.
encourage me, get me
Mm-hmm.
right, so I can get
Mm-hmm.
back on track.
Right. And that's why we're real huge about affirmations
Mhm.
too, because you have to get, like you said, that's a way to encourage yourself. One of the things I talk about is that the power of your words. And
Mhm.
I my little mantra is what you articulate, you actually activate it in your life.
Love it.
And so when well, like you say, if you're going to believe in yourself, you better start trying to find some ways to encourage yourself. You need to find some ways that you can say some true things about what God say you are. And then you got to believe that as well as believe in yourself.
Mhm.
But he
Absolutely.
he talks about a few questions. He said, "Here's a few questions I'd like for you to ask yourself." And this is all in his blog. He drops those blogs every Monday, and there's lots of great conversation. But here's one: are you living purposefully and passionately, or are you just going through the motion?
Ooh, ooh, that's so good. I mean, I think there's so many people going through the motions
Uh-huh.
in so many phases of their lives,
Mm-hmm.
be it in work,
Mm.
relationships,
Wow.
finances. A lot of times people just going through the motions. I've been guilty of going through the motions.
Okay.
But again, it ties back into understanding who you are. Like,
Absolutely.
and it's not just a young person thing.
Mm-mm.
There's some real seasoned people who don't have any idea of who they truly are,
You're
and
right.
are just kind of going through the motions of life as they've
Mhm.
always known it. And let me tell you a quick story. So
Mhm.
years ago, when I first started volunteering with Youth Revive nonprofit,
Mhm.
um, I attended this workshop in the summer. It was really some different businesses were pouring into some youth,
Mhm.
kind of talking about things that they can do, career wise. And there was a guy there. I forget which company he was representing, but he was sharing a story with some of the other volunteers there. Was telling us how there's this one particular dude, young man, had graduated, had did really good in school, scored really high on this SAT, different test, got
Mhm.
accepted to his Ivy League school. I believe it was either Harvard, or Yale, or one of the two. And He's from like a kind of rough part of town.
Mm-hmm.
Well, 6 months later, he ran into the guy at Walmart. And he was like, "Hey, man, how's it going?" And, so he was like, are you here home? Are you home visiting, or you here for a break?" And he was like, "No, I didn't go off to school." He said, "Yeah, my mom said that wasn't for us."
Wow.
Now he
Mm-hmm.
done got accepted to this Ivy League school. Just a path was created for him, but
Mm-hmm.
because not just he couldn't see past his environment, but his mom couldn't see past his
Mm-hmm.
environment either. And so, so his identity was stifled, it was hindered because
Mm-hmm.
of the norm, right?
Right.
Because of what they've always believed and what they've always done, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it
Mm-hmm.
was just it broke my heart to hear that.
Yeah.
And there's so many people living like that.
And you're right. And like you said, mom can see past where she was, and that's that level of fear. I say even that
Yes.
generational fear. I've never been any place outside of this. And you know what? We have to be very, very careful as parents, like you say, older people, because we can pass that on down to our children where
Absolutely.
they can't see, they don't have a perspective outside of where they are. I remember once TD Jakes said, if you don't have, if so, every Christmas you ought to take your kids to the richer side of town and let them
Mhm.
go through and look
I
at
like that.
what and Coach Pastor Ricardo talked about this in his message yesterday. You
Sure did.
know, you need to go to those homes, and I think he's been a little bit hard headed to his mother, but he talked about how important it was that he touched the grass and he wanted to see what they have, because
Yes.
sometimes we get limited. We have that limited lifestyle that we don't think that we can, live anything any further. And that's a sad commentary that he had all this an opportunity to have a way out of a situation, but guess what? They were afraid to take the risk. He
Absolutely. And
was
there was
afraid.
I can't remember. There was a phrase
Mhm,
that he stated in that message yesterday.
mhm.
Oh man, it was so good. It was something along the lines of kids may not they may not uh, follow everything or listen to everything that you say, but it's not going to stop them from imitating what you do.
That's right. They are
You know,
watching you. That's right.
man.
That is
Ooh.
exactly right.
And I always tell kids, like, you're always on parade. There's always somebody watching
Mhm.
you.
You
Especially
always,
yeah.
always. And so I wrote this: passion is the human equivalent of the fuel that powers your car.
Ooh,
Passion powers.
ooh.
And if you don't live passionately, like you said, just going through the motion, get up every day, do the same routine, nothing different, no passion, no purpose, no why am I getting up.
Mhm.
I'm just doing this because this is my routine thing to do. But listen, we're going to stop for a few minutes and take a little bit of a commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about, are you taking a risk?
Okay. I like it.
Through the Effective Living one-on-one coaching program, you receive customized strategies and techniques to help you move from where you currently are to where you see yourself. You will work with world-renowned life coach, Ricardo Miller, who has more than 2 decades helping people maximize their purpose. Show us your target and we'll help you hit it. Visit www.ricardomiller.com to enroll.
Well, welcome back. And tonight I have my guest and friend, Adrian Templeton, and we are continuing our talk on taking a risk on you, taking a risk on yourself,
Mm-hmm.
being yourself, taking that risk. So, Adrian, before we left for the commercial, I said we're going to talk about taking the risk. And Coach said in his blog, are you dumb it down? Are you dumb it down or even paralyzed by fear? So, and then he also talked about, are you hiding out in a job or even a marriage of convenience?
Ooh.
How are we dumbing ourselves down? Or, just like I think we talked about that just a little bit, just no purpose, just drifting through life. And some of these ways about taking a risk, we do dummy down some things in order for us not to be authentic. You want to share anything on that one, Adrian?
Yeah, sometimes I think a lot of times people will, even on a job, let's say on a job, or if someone's in school, sometimes people may have great ideas
Mm-hmm.
or see a good thing, something they can contribute to something, but because either they don't have a platform or because uh, there's their own insecurities are
Mm-hmm.
keeping them from saying anything, they'll kind of stay in the background, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we'll just allow life to just happen around them, or allow people to come up and get in front of them,
Mm-hmm.
figuratively speaking, and won't really stand up for themselves because, again, tied back to what we talked about at the beginning, they don't have a good, true sense of who they are,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so many people. There's a phrase people say, the richest place in the world is in the graveyard.
Absolutely.
So many people,
Mm-hmm.
so many people don't maximize their potential. So many people are
Mm-hmm.
not living effectively or
Mm-hmm.
maximizing their effectiveness while here
Mm-hmm.
on this earth, because we're all here for a finite amount of time.
Absolutely.
And so we got
Mm-hmm.
to do everything we can to make sure we maximize that. I've heard Pastor Danny will always talk about that dash, right?
Mm-hmm. That
From the time
dash.
from the
Mm-hmm.
time you're born to the time that you leave this earth, that dash. What is your dash consistent of, right? And so,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what are you leaving out, of that dash? There's so many times that we have to really focus more on ourselves, putting ourselves in better position so that we can
Mm-hmm.
achieve kind of some of the things that we want to,
Mm-hmm.
and even personally. So I'm in
Mm-hmm.
sales. I've been in sales for, oh man, probably 11 years or so.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
No, more than that. I've been in sales for about 15 years.
Okay.
Um, but I've been in medical sales for about 11 years. But getting in medical sales was a process.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew the journey. I was taking steps to get to where I am today.
Mm-hmm.
Even though some of those steps, there were a lot of risk with those steps. So my very first sales job, I took an $11,000 pay cut just to get this job. And I had now
Mm.
when I did this, I had just got married.
Oh, wow.
I had just got married, and we was already, things were already a little tight. And like literally took $11,000 pay cut. Tell my wife it's gonna be rough for a little bit, but just know there's purpose behind it. And
Mm-hmm.
every
Mm-hmm.
step that I've taken throughout the years,
Mm-hmm.
with each subsequent job, has been a risk, but it was a calculated risk, right?
Okay.
And
I
so
love that. Mm-hmm.
there's general risk. I'm gonna do this. Just it's
Mm-hmm.
there's risky behavior, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
there's calculated risk that you can take,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Mm-hmm.
calculated risk, there's purpose behind it, right? And then
Right. Mm-hmm.
you have a goal in mind behind it. And
Mm-hmm.
so I've taken some calculated risks throughout my career, and this really afforded us just some great opportunities.
Mm-hmm. So you had to kind of step out that fear, and like you said, y'all had to make some adjustments in your family
Had
in
to be
order
there.
to, for you to be able to take that risk, and that was something you wanted to do, and so you had the passion and the conviction of that's what you needed to do, and but even in taking that risk, there we always say this: there's some work in it, there's something that you're going to learn, and then there is sometimes it may take a little bit longer, but you took the risk, and that's
Absolutely.
what you wanted to do, and now you can see the fruit from it because you had to step out. That kind of goes back to that fear that we're afraid to step up and take that risk, and we'd rather you know, we'd rather live in that same state than to, you know, to take that little risk,
Mm-hmm.
go through the inconvenience for a little while, but with the vision that it's not going to be this way always. And I
Mm-hmm.
love what you said, a calculated risk or a healthy risk, not just risky, crazy behavior and, you know, getting up saying you ain't gonna go to work and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The kind of risk that's going to help you and your family, you know, reach some goals that you guys wanted to accomplish. So that I mean, I'm glad to hear that you know that you weren't afraid to do that, because you can look back over it, and like, and I love what you said too. The most richest place on earth is in the graveyard.
Mm-hmm.
So many people, we and this is what Coach said, to more deeply dedicate yourself to living your dreams. Dreams of some people are in the graveyard because they were afraid to take that calculated risk, like you said. They were afraid to get out of the norm or step out of that comfort zone,
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes we can get so comfortable where we are, and like you said, it becomes just routine and no purpose, no passion,
Mm-hmm.
no joy or any of that. We just going through the motion. And so he said to live your life and not and your life and not some diluted, I love this, some diluted version
Mm.
of winning everyone's approval. You must begin to put more skin in the game. I'm gonna stop right there because you're screaming too. Diluted version of winning everyone's approval. Now, I know for a fact that being a people pleaser,
Ooh.
that right there, oh my goodness, that was one of mine. And you know, you have to continuously work on it. But that is what happens. That's that mask that we put on. You know, you're angry with somebody said or did to you,
Mm-hmm.
but you're gonna put on that mask, and because you're trying to please them or get their approval.
That
But
is true.
that's diluted. That's a diluted version. I'm convicted by that. That's a
Yeah,
diluted.
and I've always been a people pleaser. I'm peacemaker. I want everybody happy.
Uh-huh.
So and I'm very transparent about different things. So I have shared numerous times about just my past. So I dealt with some sexual trauma growing up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I never said anything. The enemy would put things in my head. I never wanted to say anything because I didn't want to be the one to cause discourse in my family.
Okay.
I didn't want to be the blame for everything going wrong. Even though I was, I wasn't thinking about it the right way. But I was, there was fear, a number of things associated with that. But
Mm-hmm.
I allowed that to kind of hinder me, and
Mm-hmm.
and I lived my life just focusing on the approval of other people, making sure that
Wow.
I matched up to these other different things, these other different
Mm-hmm.
images, these other different things that I saw around me, and what I
Mm-hmm.
felt that other people thought that I should. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it was important for me to be seen as a certain thing or
Mm-hmm.
as a certain person or whatnot, and big part of that is because I was not living in my true authentic self because that was hidden, and I wore
Mm-hmm.
those masks for so long, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
As I talked about earlier, when I felt like that veil was lifted from me, then
Mm-hmm.
I could truly see me for who I was, who God
Mm-hmm.
created me to be.
Right.
And then I can
Mm-hmm.
start making those changes,
Mm-hmm.
and really try to be more authentic. But it's even now, even though I'm on the other side of that, I have to make sure that the things that I'm doing are authentic in
Mm-hmm.
nature, and I have to check myself. It's really important for us as we invest in ourselves and as we take risks to have self examination. Now we got to
Mm-hmm. Oh.
check ourselves, make sure that we're not that we're still on the right path, because
Mm-hmm.
we can be easily swayed
Mm-hmm.
into doing something else, or just because everybody else is kind of doing it, and it can just
Right.
naturally happen, progress that way if we are
Mm-hmm.
not true to who you are and really tight on
Mm-hmm.
our morals and our boundaries.
Mm-hmm. And like you said, and I believe that too, Adrian. Once there's some freedom that we've experienced, I believe that we have to work hard we have to work continuously and consistently to maintain that freedom.
Mm,
Because I sometimes you've lived in that mask and that where you were not being authentically you for so long, and then when you start experiencing the freedom, we
mm,
have to make sure that we are not going back. We have to consistently move forward,
Yes.
consistently go back and evaluate ourselves daily so we can make sure that we are not going back, because that familiarity, that's what I call it.
Yep.
It's so easy for us to digress to, and then we are kind of starting over again.
Yep.
And so I love, I like that. That's what you're being, but invested in yourself. I love that you can be authentic and transparent
Mm.
about yourself, because that's key too, to be very
Absolutely.
transparent with ourselves, and to be transparent with others. And I'm not an advocate that I got to go and tell the whole Facebook page people about me,
Yeah.
but I know that there comes a time that you have to be, what it say, true to thy own self.
Yes.
And I believe that it is freeing when we can stand up and acknowledge some places where we are with like believers and people that are in wanting to better themselves. We have to stand up, and when I say stand up, I don't mean just, but stand up in your conviction
Yeah.
as to who you are.
There's growth in being able to take criticism
Mm-hmm.
and correction.
It
I think
is.
so. A lot of times we can be going through the motions in life, or maybe find ourselves kind of heading down a certain path that we, may
Mm-hmm.
not be totally sure that this is the right thing. But then sometimes, maybe people in your life that are really trying to bring correction and call you out, and
Mm-hmm.
respectively. But every all of us, let's be transparent. I mean, truthful. All
Mm-hmm.
of us can't take criticism. Some of
No.
us, we take it. Oh, I'm so offended. I'm so offended. Well, I mean, let's. Now for me, I always try to like, okay, let me not focus so much on how things were said, but let me focus on what was said.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
And does it apply? And is there something that I can take from it?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so, and I try to do this in different conversations. I'm always trying to take something. Like, what can I
Right.
take? Like, don't ever. I even tell folks, don't go to church just to go to church. Like, if you're not getting anything, then you might as well not go.
Might well stay at home.
Might as well stay at home. And so in every situation, in conversation, I try to
Mm-hmm.
listen. Listening
Mm-hmm.
is such a great skill to have that everybody thinks they have, but everybody does not have.
No.
It's
No.
not, or it's not. It's not developed in everybody. Said like
Mm-hmm.
that. But it's something that we have to do.
Mm-hmm.
We got to invest in time.
We have to cultivate listening, don't we? We
Absolutely.
have to cultivate it. Yeah. And then I like what you did say too. None of us like rebuke and conviction, correction,
Right.
but we do have to step back and get out of our feelings, clear the air, clear your perspective, and see if there's any truth
Yeah.
to what that person said. And like you said, we might not like the messenger, and sometimes we don't like the message, but you have
Uh-huh.
to be able to sift through that and see if there's any validity to it. And if so, we have to be responsible for, looking at that and being willing to make some changes.
Yeah, you know what? So there's I went through this program a few years ago, right before the pandemic,
Uh-huh.
and through the DeVos Urban Leadership Initiative, and we read a book. There's a book called The Anatomy of Peace,
Ooh.
and so this book, it's kind of set up as like a story, but there's some great key principles in it, and it's really focused on having an outward approach, outward outlook on things instead of an
Mm-hmm.
inward. So when you
Mm-hmm.
look inward, you're focused on, oh, me, how's this affecting me? And
Mm-hmm.
me. It's easy to play the victim when you're focusing on
Wow.
inward because you're not hearing anyone else, right? Because you're only focused
Mm-hmm.
on your own effect or your own results and things. But when you focus your attention outwardly, then you can hear other people. Then you can
Wow.
highlight other people, and then you can truly see, how you can affect other people in a positive way. And so
Okay.
honestly, it was when I started looking at things outwardly that things started to get a little bit better in my marriage.
Oh,
Right.
that's
And
mm-hmm.
so there were times where I didn't, I'm thankful that I was able to invest that time into, that program because there's different things that I started seeing about myself that
Mm.
I thought I had together.
Mhm.
And I was checked real good. And I was like, You're struggling over here.
Uh-huh.
You need to tidy up on some of these things.
Uh-huh.
But it was doing throughout that process that I started to kind of shift on some things. I was like, you know what?
Mhm.
I need to start hearing my wife differently. I need to start
Mm.
responding to my wife
Mhm.
differently.
Mhm.
And not just in my wife, but in ministry,
Mhm.
in other
Mhm.
areas too. But
Mhm.
again, that self-examination,
Right.
being
Mhm.
our true authentic self.
Right. And that's what we do in the effective living community. We talk about being whole and living a life that we don't need a vacation from, but we want to look at those 5 areas that we talk about in faith, fitness, finance, fun, and family.
Yes.
And so we want to work on those all the time, because if one is out of whack, all the rest of them are out of whack. And Steve Covett made this one. He made this statement that many times we need to seek to understand rather than always be understood, and
Oh,
that is part of us, like you said, looking inwardly, but also looking outwardly to see what we're saying and what we're doing and how it is affecting someone else. In order for and but it takes growth to be able to look inwardly and see where you are that needs to be improved rather than,
mhm.
because it's easy to play the blame game and put it on
Absolutely.
somebody else. But listen, what are some ways that you think that, since we're talking about investing, what are some ways that you think that we can invest in ourselves? What are some ways that you think?
I think we can invest in ourselves. Just personal development, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that can be in reading some different books that's going to
Mm-hmm.
just, um, you know, develop some aspect of you. Maybe you need to learn how to get more organized. Maybe you want to learn how to just invest. Maybe you want to
Mm-hmm.
learn how to just get your finances right. You want to learn
Mm-hmm.
how to manage better. And all those things can be principles that can be applied to every aspect of your life, in a
Right.
relationship, on your job,
Mm-hmm.
in ministry,
Mm-hmm.
in anything. But I think just investing in yourself and it's so important in doing those things, man. And just like I said, it can be a book, personal development. It can be like podcast,
Right.
uh,
Mm-hmm.
such as the Effective Living uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
podcast, or any of these things. So think anything that's going to add value
Mm-hmm.
to you,
Mm-hmm.
and I think those are great things.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I put on here for myself as far as investing in me, Coach talks to us all the time about having that to-do list and make it the night before and then get up and you know what you need to do, check off what you've gotten done, and then add the other things that you didn't to the other one. So I put on here, I need to start putting my own self on my own calendar of things of my to-do list.
That's good.
Because sometimes we get so busy that we forget about we need to have some time. And so I said, okay, I want to allocate some time for how much time I want to spend reading some other things, other books and stuff outside of the Bible.
Yes.
You got to do your devotion. So that's kind of there. But you need it for me, being retired. Somebody told me just because you've retired don't mean your body has retired, and that stuck with me.
Right.
So there are some things that I know I needed to put in place to invest in myself, because it's so easy to put yourself on the back burner, and there's nothing wrong with us investing in ourselves and taking
Absolutely.
that risk to do that. And we want to encourage everyone, if you're not taking some time to invest in yourself, then you're taking a risk, because investing in you is not a risk. That ought to be something that we automatically do all the time. But our
Mhm.
time is getting away from us, Adrian's. But I want to talk to us about, Coach has about 5 ways to get more out of your life, because that's what we want. That's what this blog is all about. He said, this is your life. This is your ride, and you must make it count by believing in it, investing in it, and do things that really matter.
Yes.
So he talked about 5 ways. I'm going to read one, and I'm going to let you talk about the ones that you want to. But he
Okay.
says, ask yourself, what fears? Now, these are questions and these are things that we want everybody to invest, because we're not going to answer them for you because I think they're personal. Ask yourself, what fears might be holding you back from investing more of yourself in your job, in your marriage, in your parenting, in your friendship,
Ooh.
and your career? That because we want to make sure we're getting all of those done. And then he says, name them. You know what? I'm like, I always tell him, if I don't write it down, it might not happen for me. I can't take no ownership in it. So we have to begin to write. We believe here we want to make sure we're journaling something and writing down something. So that's kind of I'll be writing a lot of stuff, and I need to organize it though, so I can go back and find it though.
But that's good. I mean, writing things down, it just puts that's a faith in action, right? And so
Yes.
even if something that you're not doing right now, writing things down, it just puts that faith in motion, right? And so it may be something that you're believing for. It hasn't quite manifested, but you write it down, you speak it, and you pray over it, and you keep that at the forefront. You prioritize that thing, and you can just sit back and wait for the results, because it's gonna happen.
And you know what? It's nothing like those prayer journals or whatever, and you've written those prayers out, and sometimes we've written them out in some of the deepest times, that we needed God to intervene. And then we just keep praying, and then all of a sudden, God kind of takes that burden off, even though it hasn't been answered. But it's amazing when you go back and you can look in that journal and you can see he did answer it. Didn't answer it how I may have wanted it to be, but it was answered. And so that to me is an opportunity for us to build our faith. And then what about next to each fear? Listen, he wants us to write out those things that we're fearful of. And he said, next to each fear, then you write out describe an action that would help free you from the fear and solidify your decision to risk something to get something.
That's so good.
That is so good. Not just write them down, but write down, where this lady used to say, if you come with a problem, bring a solution.
Absolutely. 100%.
So if you got fear as a problem, well, what is it that you can write down that's going to make that, make a decision to take that risk about that?
That's so good and practical. And then I like the third thing he mentioned was it says there are big differences between foolish risk and smart risk. Looking at a situation in your current life, write down examples of each. I think that's something we can easily do. All of us can easily do. That goes back to what we were talking about earlier, calculated risk, right?
Calculated risk.
Am I just doing this just because, or am I doing this because there's purpose and intentionality behind it?
Right.
Am I doing this to get to the next level? I love Pastor Ricardo, Coach Ricardo. He's always talked about for years, like and trying to assess where you want to be in life. Like if you can't be, let's say you're at a level 5, and you want to be at a level 7. You can't surround yourself with a bunch of level 1s and 2s.
Right.
They're not going to do anything to build you up, to pull you up to that next level. So you want to make sure you surround yourself and take the risk to put yourself in the right company of people that's going to help invest in you.
And it's so important, the company that you keep, right?
Absolutely.
You don't want if people are not moving in the direction that you want your life to go in. Sometimes I think Pastor Danny says sometimes you just got to give them a permanent wave or a nice wave, but and it doesn't necessarily mean that you're kicking them to the curb. But in this season, they may not be who you need to push you forward. And then number 4, he said, list 3 things you care about so deeply or so passionately about that you are willing to risk it all for them. That's going to take some really sitting down thinking about it, because it means that you are willing to risk everything for that. So I want to encourage us to kind of think about those 3 things. And so we know family is going to be important in those kind of things, but we really need to sit down and put the pencil and paper and think about those.
I think. Oh, sorry. I was going to say there's this thing. It's called the big rocks. So if you think about how you're prioritizing different things, and I was just sharing this with someone recently. It's really important for you to because if you think about it, if you have a jar and you got a bunch of rocks, some big, some small, if you just start putting rocks in there just randomly, you're gonna run out of room.
Right.
You won't be able to fit them all in. But if you start focusing on your big rocks, those things that have the most priority. So your spiritual development, right? Your family, your wife and kids, or whatever's important, whatever has the most prioritized value. Put those are your big rocks.
Those are good.
Take care of those things first, and then fill up the rest of the jar with those little rocks. They don't have as high a priority, but they're still important.
They're
right?
important.
That way you can it'll help you be more effective and get to more of a balanced life. I'm saying it because I'm speaking to myself.
Hey, I hear you.
That fifth question was, if you are risk aversive or risk avoidant, describe 3 things you could do to build your courage and confidence. And again, these are practical things that we can do and should do to try and put ourselves in the best position to live effectively.
Right. And both of those are good. It just depends on which kind of risk you're willing to take. But you don't want to be a risk avoidant because you're not going to ever take a chance.
Right.
And so, but he said, it's your life, your world. Are you up for cultivating a new and wonderful version of sustainability, compassion, and peace? Please remember, when you choose yourself over comfort, you're investing in your future. And it can be a little scary, but if you have been following the Effective Living platform for any amount of time, in order to live life effectively, you have to take risk and invest in yourself. You can't grow if you don't take a risk. You can't grow.
So true.
You can't grow, and choosing yourself is a risk. It's stepping out of the familiar. We talked about that tonight, and into the unknown, but it's stepping out of security and into uncertainty.
Yes.
So great conversation tonight, Adrian. Thank you so much. Hey, Steve Harvey has this book about faith and taking, I think it's Jump. He said, your willingness to jump will open doors for you. Every jump will increase your wisdom and broaden your vision. So take a leap of faith and jump.
Yes.
You got to be willing to take that jump. You got to be willing to take that risk, because like I said, there's no penalty in being you. And you know what? Coach talk about this all the time. Somebody's doing what you basically are afraid to do or haven't done. So you will have to. It says you will become the afterthought to someone who is willing to take the risk to excel. That's what we want to do, is take the risk to excel. Well, Adrian, thank you so much for coming on with me tonight and having this conversation. But I want you to share anything that you're doing that you want our audience to know.
Yeah, we talk about taking risks. And so in our community, oftentimes seeking therapy is has been frowned upon before, right? And so I know it's also a great tool and a resource that I believe that God has blessed us with, and there's so many great people, like-minded people that share your general beliefs and morals and things that you can, but they have been trained in these different areas to kind of help you navigate through certain things. So speaking of taking a risk, my wife and myself, we are preparing to start some counseling, just so we can be living more effectively, in terms of what we're doing with each other, how we're raising our kids, and just how we're living life. And so we're trying to invest in ourselves so that we can be the best versions of ourselves.
Thank you for sharing that. And that just kind of circles back to what we're talking about in the beginning about it is mental health month. And in order, we have to make sure that we're healthy and whole. And I'm an advocate for us seeking therapy if we need it.
Yes.
There's some Christian therapists that are great. And I think that's a cultural thing that we have, that we don't need it because God is going to fix it all.
Right.
But he will, but he fixes it through some of the therapists that we have. And we need to be willing to take advantage of that. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us tonight on Ricardo Miller Monday Night Conversation. And look, if you need to find out anything about what Coach Ricardo offers, the things that he's doing, he's got something grand coming up in June for the men that he shared on his blog and on his on that www.ricardomiller.com. So please go and check out the things that he has going on. You will not at all be disappointed. So thank you tonight, Adrian, and thank you everyone for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you next Monday night on this conversation with Ricardo Miller. Good night, everyone.
Good night.